Likutei Sichos, Chelik Chav Dalet, volume 24, the fourth Sicha for Parshas Teitzei. This Sicha is an explanation on what's brought down in our Parsha regarding a matter of dispute that comes before judges, and the judges give a verdict, and even if they have to impose or inflict punishment, how they go about it. This is kind of a Rashi Sicha, albeit a very easy one to understand. As a means of introduction, and to revisit a very important rule which we know in Rashi, and that is that Rashi typically explains any question, all questions that arise in Pshutai Shel Mikra, meaning in the simple, basic meaning of the pasuk. To the extent that when Rashi detects that there's a question, if he doesn't know how to answer it, of course he knows the answer, but he doesn't know how to answer it al pi pshutei shel mikra, in accordance with the simple basic meaning of the pasuk, sticking to that exclusively, Rashi will say, lo yadaiti, I don't know what the answer is over here. In other words, Rashi addresses every question. He doesn't ask the questions, he answers them. And you can actually work it backwards and understand from Rashi's explanation what the question of the pasuk was. Now, when Rashi does not say anything, it can come out one of the two. Either that there is no question at all, even if one should have a question, one has to work a little harder and realize that there isn't a question to begin with, or perhaps there is some kind of question here, but it's answered by means of perhaps another Rashi, which had already been taught in close proximity to that question that arises. In other words, we can learn from Rashi, not only when Rashi says something, but also when Rashi doesn't say something. That also is very telling. So it would be worthwhile to review the verses, like I said, chapter 25, verse 1, 2 at least, where it says like this, Ki yeh riv ben anoshim. If there shall be a riv. Now what is a riv? And this is very important for the Sicha. A riv means a dispute, a quarrel, an argument, a fierce argument. That's a riv. So if there's a riv between two people, v'nikshu ala mishpat, so they will approach the court, v'shaftu, and the court will judge them. The court will look into the matter, and then hand down a ruling, v'hitzdiku et tzaddik v'hishu es harasha, and they will find the righteous one righteous, meaning they will find him, they will give the verdict that the one, the tzaddik, the right one, is correct. V'hishiu es harasha, and the one who is the rasha, the one who's incorrect, they're going to lay on the verdict that he is the rasha. And the next verse says, V'hayim bin hakis harasha, that if you have to inflict malchus on the rasha, how to go about it. Says the Rebbe in the Sicha, it was discussed already many times that Rashi answers every question that would pop up, and when Rashi doesn't know an answer, like we said in the introduction, he will say lo yadaiti, I don't know. And therefore, when we encounter a pasuk where it seems l'cha'ira that there is a question, that there's some matter of difficulty, and Rashi says nothing, Rashi does not address it, it's total silence, he doesn't even say I don't know. From this it becomes obvious, it's proven, this proves that in truth, indeed, there is no question at all, or that it's answered. According to this, we need to understand, we need some clarification and understanding in this verse, which says, V'hitzdiku et tzaddik v'hishiu es harasha. What does this mean? This seems to be superfluous. It just has to say that ushvatim, they're going to give a verdict, and then move on to the next verse, which says that if the verdict is that one of them has to get punished by means of malchus, then this is the procedure how you do it. But what's the point in saying that they're going to find the merititious one merititious, and the guilty one they're going to find guilty? They're going to find that v'tzdiku et tzaddik v'hishiu es harasha. It seems to be superfluous. Perhaps, maybe, one could answer that really the focus here is that v'hishiu es harasha, the words that they will find the guilty party, they'll find them guilty, and they'll give him a guilty verdict, is almost like a segue into the next verse of V'hoya im bin hakos. right? That what if they have the verdict is that they're going to have to inflict punishment on him. That perhaps could be a suggestion of an answer, but that does not suffice because it still does not explain the words v'hitzdiku es hatzadik. They seem to be absolutely and totally superfluous. Now, in the Sifri, meaning in the Medrash, there is an opinion that explains it this way. That says, what does it mean v'hitzdiku es hatzadik? This is telling the judges how they should approach any case, any matter that comes before them, even when there's a dispute, even when there's a quarrel, that they should attempt first to v'hitzdiku es hatzadik. That their first attempt, meaning their initial approach should be, an attitude should be to try to find the person merititious, to try to find any whatsoever merit, an angle to give a positive verdict. And if they can't, then v'hishiu sarasha. That's how it's explained in the Sifri. However, this cannot be the case, we cannot say that Rashi actually holds this, or that Rashi agrees that this is the way to understand it according to Pshutei Shel Mikra. Why? Number one, Rashi should have said something. Rashi should have said it clearly. And number two, if you really think of it, this explanation of the Medrash is actually not consistent with Pshutei Shel Mikra, and therefore Rashi couldn't have said it. Why? Why is it not consistent with Pshutei Shel Mikra? Because if you read it that way, what it's really saying is it's referring to the same person, to one and the same person. According to the way the Sifri learns it, v'hitzdiku es hatzadik means how you should approach the matter, your attitude should be, your angle, your intention should be v'hitzdiku es hatzadik, and only if that fails, then v'hishiu sarasha. But if you look at the beginning of the pasuk, in the plain literal meaning of the verse, we're talking about two people. We're talking about two individuals, two entities. Where there makes more sense that one ends up being v'hitzdiku es hatzadik and the other ends up being v'hishiu sarasha. So this cannot be consistent with Pshutei Shel Mikra, and therefore back to the question. It seems to be an obvious question here, but Rashi doesn't address it. Says the Rebbe, the answer that Rashi doesn't say anything is because everything could be understood from the Rashi in the beginning of the pasuk. The Rashi and the words ki yiriv, that when there'll be a dispute, when there'll be a quarrel. What does Rashi say? Rashi says as follows: Soifom liyas negoshim lamishpat. That if there is a quarrel, at the end, that will result in them approaching the court. Says Rashi, Emoir me'ata. Now you can say from now, from said this you can see, Ein shalom yotzei mitoich meriva. There's no peace, there's no true shalom, no true harmony that can come out of a quarrel, of a dispute. And he continues and he says, Mi goram leloit. Who caused Teroid? What caused Lot? Lot was the nephew of Avrohom. Lifresh min tzaddik, to separate from the tzaddik, and we all know what happened as a result of it. He almost lost his life. Have omer zumiriva. Says Rashi, you must say that this is because there was a quarrel. If you remember, there was a dispute between the shepherds of Avrohom and the shepherds of Lot. Now one can ask, what is Rashi saying? Rashi says that if there's some kind of dispute, then he's telling us how to read the verse that, wow, look what's going to happen. Terrible things going to happen. They're going to end up in front of the judges. What's so bad about that? What's so bad about going in front of the judges? It seems to Rashi that this is some kind of negative thing that's going to end up to happen as a result of their dispute, of their quarrel. Moreover, if you think about it, it's a very positive thing. Precisely because they come before the judges, do they end up having some kind of peace and tranquility? They get to some resolution. Another question, why does this connect exactly to the dispute between Avrohom and Lot's shepherds and Lot separating from Avrohom? How is that used as an example, as a sample of this matter that Rashi is bringing out? The answer is as follows. Rashi really is explaining to us. Rashi is answering a question. You see, typically, whenever the Torah discusses matters that come before judges, the Torah refers to them as matters, as issues. For example, If you look in Parshas Mishpatim, Perek Chav Dalet Pasuk Yudalet, it says, "Mi bal dvarim yigash elai." Anybody who has any matter should come to me for judgment. You look earlier in Parshas Yisrael, in Chumash Shmos, that is, chapter 18, verse 16, it says, "Ki yeh lahem davar ba'elai." If they have any matter, any issue, they should come to me for judgment. So we see typically in the Torah that in reference to a judicial matter, it's called matter, issue, not riv. Riv is a quarrel. Riv is the fight, is something which is a lot deeper than just having a judicial matter, an issue that needs to be resolved. And that's what Rashi is explaining. That's what Rashi is telling us. That riv is being used in the context of quarrel, similar to what happened by Avrohom and Lot. Over there too, the Torah tells us that there was a riv, there was a quarrel between the shepherds of the flock of Avrohom and the shepherds of of Lot, and then later, for example, using the term Vayarivu Roye Gror, whenever there's a matter of fighting, of quarreling, that's when the Torah uses riv. And this is what Rashi is explaining to us. That if their issue, if their dispute reaches the point of riv, of quarrel, then at the end they're going to have to come to a judgment. But Rashi says from here, you can say, and you'll have to reach the conclusion that no peace, no harmony will come out of this, because it's coming from a meriva, it's coming from a quarrel. In other words, this is a dispute that's in a manner, in a level of quarrel. And from such a type of judicial matter, no good comes out of it. No true peace will come out of it. You see, usually, what happens? Two people have a disagreement. They don't see eye to eye. But generally speaking, they have a desire to get along. They have a desire to work things out between them. So sometimes they can even do it amongst themselves. They do some kind of arbitration or mediation amongst themselves, and if they can, they bring in a third party, or they go to judges. But both of them have the same objective. They don't hate each other. They just can't agree or can't figure out what's the right way to go forward in a particular matter, in a particular issue. That brings to peace. Because ultimately, when they come to the judge, ultimately when they make the mediation, the arbitration, and they reach a resolution, they reach a conclusion, well, everything is fine, because that was their intention. However, when there's a riv, when there's a quarrel, and they're fighting and arguing, then even when there is a judgment, even when there's a verdict, Bezdin gives its psak, it's still not going to bring to any peace, any true harmony. In fact, all it's going to lead to is v'hitztikus hatzadik v'yeshivas harasha. One's going to end up being the tzaddik, one's going to end up being the rasha. And that's why Rashi brings the story of Lot as an example, as a sample for this. You see, over there, the quarrel was not between Avrohom and Lot. In fact, Avrohom says to Lot, Ki anoshim achim anachnu. We are brothers, we are so close, why should we be arguing? But there was a quarrel, an outright fight between their shepherds. And look what it led to. Even though Avrohom did not want to kick Lot away, and even though Lot didn't have any issue with Avrohom, but because this was a matter that ended up becoming a riv, a quarrel, look what happened. It resulted in Lot separating from the tzaddik and ending up where he ended up. By this, automatically, we now understand, and we have the answer. Once we understand how Rashi approaches this pasuk and focuses in and emphasizes why the pasuk uses the term riv versus davar, now we can appreciate that Rashi had nothing more to say, because now we understand the words in the pasuk v'hitzdikus hatzadik v'hishivas harasha. Because like we said, these are not two good people, but rather there's one good person here and one bad person here. We're not talking about two parties that are looking for the truth, but rather we're dealing with and it becomes very clear and obvious, we're dealing with a situation in which one is absolutely a tzaddik, one is absolutely in the right, and one is a rasha, one is totally and absolutely in the wrong. And therefore over here, the objective of the verdict is not to bridge between these two people, as typically would be the case, and bring them closer together, but rather to make a clear determination who's the tzaddik and who's the rasha. And the Rebbe says you can perhaps even add another point. One would think that once you've reached a verdict in such a case, perhaps because there was a quarrel here, because there was a fight, well, maybe both of them are somewhat rishoyim. In other words, not one, but both. This is where the pasuk comes in and says no. Once you reach the verdict, everything becomes clarified. Everything becomes determined. Now it becomes clear, not just for now, but also retroactively, that this quarrel wasn't the doing of both of them, but rather there's v'hitztiku es hatzadik v'hishiu es harasha. That the rasha is the one who's totally at fault, and he's the one who dragged the other party in against his will, dragged them into this, and caused there to be this fight, but it wasn't two people fighting, it was really one causing the entire fight.